Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. I am Glenn. Today's episode: Four Neglected Masterpieces. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am the Chief Operating Everything at Writing for Screens, a channel in which I have tried to take the skills and tools and insights that I had to figure out for myself during a 25-year career writing for TV and movies. I am trying to put them all down here on this channel on my way out of the business, leaving behind a little bit of useful information so that you can try and figure out what works for you, because there is no right way to be a writer. There is no right way to make art. So therefore, every artist must work out their own path. They must figure out their own things that they want to do, figure out their own things that they can do, figure out how that they are going to do what they want to do. All of this is stuff that only you can figure out for yourself. All I can do is leave for you a large pile of things to try, tips, tools, tricks, skills, things that might help you, but you can only figure that out for yourself. All I have done here is this is a little screen grab of my channel, and on that channel page, if you scroll down, you will find 3 playlists. The first 3 playlists on the playlist ranks are Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. Those 3 playlists combined have about 50 10-minute videos, 10-ish minute videos on them. Each one of them has its own specific topic, genre, flashbacks, thinking in scenes, how to ask questions, dramatic action. Each one of them, I try to give you some basic things to think about, some tools to try, some insights into how this stuff works so that you can figure it out for yourself. So please, I beg you, these videos, 50 of them, each only about 10 minutes long, please look at them, because anything that I have to teach you is in these. Everything that I have to tell you will be here. I beg you, 24/7, all free. Just look at the titles, look at the thumbnails, gigantic words that tell you in nice, colorful phrases what it's about. That's what I do here. Having made those 50 videos, I have been live streaming every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, if I can make it. I come here and I take on a different topic for an hour and I answer questions. So today's topic is 4 neglected masterpiece films that I think you should know about. And then after I'm done talking about those 4 movies, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have in the chat. Hello to everyone here. A couple of quick highs. Hello, Tom Lewis and Michael, and damn you all, and Pelicans and Doreen and Donna. Good to see all of you. All right, let's get to it. Let's get down to these 4 movies, and then we can talk about other things if you like. These 4 movies are Odd Man Out, They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, Coming Home, and 5 Corners. They tend not to show up a lot on streaming services. They tend to be a little hard to find, but they are available out there. You can find DVDs or streaming rentals. Anyway, these are 4 movies that I simply think they appeal to me personally. They all have these things in common. Each one kind of blends a sense of naturalism, of capturing the world as we know it, with a sense of poetry or lyricism, some kind of creative license taken to highlight the qualities of life that they are capturing. So it's a blend of realistic and poetic. Every one of them is taking on some kind of powerful theme or vision about the world as it was at the time that these films were made. But none of them are lectury. None of them are easy. They are all presenting contradictory, complex, emotionally ambivalent situations in which you can't simply say, here's the hero, here's the villain. That's how it works. Now we know the answer. all of these present you with characters that you deeply, deeply get involved with, but at the same time, you see them caught in quandaries where there isn't a clear right thing to do. Um, they are almost all complex in their structure in some way, dealing with more than one character, and there's not just a simple hero's journey. There's a group of people or a group of people who are colliding with each other. And every one of them has some kind of unusual or unexpected characters and character moments. Just when you think you understand some character, they will surprise you by talking and they'll revealing something about themselves. All of these movies have these qualities. And I love them deeply. I really try not to spend too much time talking about other people's work. I feel like the job here is to talk about your work. But now and then I'm like, nobody talks about these. These movies are simply underappreciated. So let's talk about them. Now I've grabbed a bunch of images from each movie. I don't have clips. I don't do clips. But I do have some images. They are all sorts of different sizes and things. But I just wanted to give you a flavor of what these things are like. So let's start with Odd Man Out, a 1957 film from Britain, directed by the great Carol Reed, based on a novel. Here's the poster, or a poster. James Mason is the lead character. The story is about an Irish Republican Army leader who has been sprung from jail. He's been broken out of jail where he was being kept for many, many years. And his gang has found a way to break him out of prison, and he's been in hiding. He went right from prison to an attic room where he's been inside, and they are planning to rob the payroll of a nearby factory in order to supply the Republican Army group with weapons and materials and to have funds to work with. So what we have is this romantic and brilliant leader who starts out with them on this robbery that they've arranged, but he has not been in the world. He's been locked up in prison for years. And so when he goes out on the robbery it's the first time he has been out in the world. He's seen the sun. He has seen it is disorienting to him. And so the robbery goes wrong. And he gets wounded and separated from the gang. And so he is on the run in the city, and the rest of the gang is dealing with the fact that they can't find him, that they're searching for him. The police are after him. They're trying to save his life, but he is traveling through the back alleys of the city, and different characters in the city pick him up. They find him. They deal with him in different ways depending on their interests. And at the same time, we're watching the politics of the gang because there's factions within the gang. So it's a really complex story, which it almost does not fit the rules of Hollywood storytelling at all. The main character is not making things happen. He is wandering, wounded and vulnerable through the city, and different people are using him for different things. So it's really a fascinating case of a brilliant, gripping story, but at the same time, it doesn't go anywhere that you expect, and you don't really understand in a Hollywood plot terms what it's about. But it's very, very emotionally clear. You follow different characters and see their different takes on this terrible incident. It is gorgeous. Here's some images. Oops, that's the wrong one. Beautiful. He's the man who directed the Third Man. So this is a phenomenal visual director. Here's some other images. Even just this is them planning the robbery, and just the composition of this scene, the composition of this frame is, I think, really, really dynamic and exciting, but at the same time very, very naturalistic. It's a bunch of people sitting in a room. Forgive me for drinking some coffee. Here's the kind of imagery you'll see in this movie. It is haunting. It is romantic. It is tragic. It is quite amazing. Okay, so the next movie I want to talk about is They Shoot Horses, Don't They? From 1969. I think I've mentioned this movie before because um, it is truly, truly a masterpiece. But at the same time, I believe because of corporate contractual issues, almost never available on streaming or even on DVD. It's very hard to find. Um, it was with the company that made it was a small company called ABC Films. The TV network ABC had a brief flirtation with making movies, and I suspect that part of the problem is that ABC Films didn't last very long, and therefore whatever contracts or deals they made, for some reason it is unavailable for streaming, so it's quite hard to find. This was the original 1969 poster. Um, it is a fascinating example of 1960s filmmaking, very critical of society, very dealing with young people trapped in a world of unfair establishment. Um, but at the same time, it is very, very classically composed and styled and shot. It's set during the 1930s. It's based on a novel, a Depression era novel, which was a fierce social protest noir. It's about a dance marathon, which was a thing they did back in the 1930s, not unlike the Colosseum in ancient Rome. They would set up these giant halls and they would get a band and they would play music and they would have people dance, and they had to basically dance until they dropped. They would dance nonstop for days and weeks at a time, and to see which couple could stay on their feet and keep dancing the longest. It's both brilliant and cruel and monstrous. People would come and watch the show. They would bet on different couples. They would support different couples. It's a shocking and brilliant analysis of society grinding these poor people who have to dance until they die, basically, in order to try and win this money, this prize money. This is, like I said, the look is very, very classical Hollywood. It's very beautifully styled and designed. The shots are gorgeous. It's widescreen and beautiful color. But at the same time, it is agonizing, and there are certain sequences in which these characters are forced to do what they call a sprint, when they have to run in a circle, basically, as a couple. It's an amazing movie. I cannot tell you how much I love these four movies. The dialogue is very clever. It focuses on this young woman who's a tough, hard luck dame in Hollywood. The thing takes place at the Santa Monica Pier, which is part of Los Angeles in the 1930s. And a young guy from the countryside who's come to California, and they're both broke, and they are initially signed into the dance marathon with other people. But as the story goes on, they end up together, then they're apart, then they're together. It's a fascinating story. And then there's the whole crew of other couples and dancers, each of whom has a very distinctive character. And the man who's running the place, played by Gig Young, who was usually known for comedies, and he does a brutally cynical showbiz guy. I believe he won the Academy Award for it. Anyway, this is an amazing movie. I urge you to find it. It's actually, it is on YouTube, a complete copy. It's not the greatest copy, but it is a good full copy, because otherwise you have to find a DVD. It's very hard to find this movie. The next hold on, let me do a couple of quick hellos. Hi, Nishaj at Next Institute. They had disco balls in the 1930s. Yes, they absolutely did. They weren't called disco balls, obviously, but they did have lighting effects in which they would have a mirrored ball shining little dots of light. Because anyway, yes, the answer is They did indeed have what we call disco balls. Um, yeah. Oh, by the way, the poster line here: "People are the ultimate spectacle." I mean, this is just phenomenal stuff. Anyway, um, okay, and hello, Larry. Good to see you. The next movie I would like to talk about is from. Oops. Oh, there we go. 1978, the movie Coming Home. Um, this was just a few years. It's the one of the first of the Vietnam movies. There were very, very few movies made about Vietnam during the Vietnam War. There's one terrible John Wayne movie called The Green Berets. It's a handful of movies. Basically, people did not want to talk about it. It was very political. It was very controversial. America lost. America shouldn't have been there in the first place. So this was a shattering event for America, and the social protests that happened during that time tore the country apart. And so as a result, Hollywood was very slow to deal with Vietnam. Fairly soon after this movie, Apocalypse Now and Platoon, some movies did start to come out, but this one deals with Vietnam without ever going to Vietnam. It is about the people coming home, about the soldiers and the families dealing with the fallout, with the experience of having come. This is the original poster, I believe. Jane Fonda, Jon Voight, Bruce Dern. It was directed by the amazing Hal Ashby. If you don't know who that is, you should check him out. This, I believe, may be his greatest film. But he also did Harold and Maude. Here's some stills from the movie. Bruce Dern plays a very gung-ho soldier being shipped off, and his wife, Jane Fonda, is a very conventional woman who is not ready to question authority or society. But then she meets Jon Voight, who is she's working in a hospital, an army hospital. She lives on the army base because she's an army wife. She begins to volunteer at the army hospital, and she meets Jon Voight, who is a veteran who has been paralyzed from the waist down in Vietnam and come back, and he is very, very troubled and angry about the war, and they fall in love, which shatters her ability to be complacent about society. It is a beautiful, shockingly complex movie because each of the characters is given an awful lot of empathy. It's filmed very, very casually, very naturalistically, nonchalantly. You feel like you're just watching real things happen. But Hal Ashby also is a master of using popular music. This was one of their early movies to take popular songs and weave them in as background, but also as sort of foreground, as sort of commentary or vibe. So the use of music is extraordinary. The acting is incredible, and the script by the great Waldo Salt is so sensitive and thought-provoking and emotional. It's just an amazing, amazing movie about people who you would ordinarily categorize easily and say, I understand this person, I understand that person, I know where they stand, I know who they are. And you watch as you're, oh goodness, I'm having some camera troubles. I apologize. Not sure exactly what's going on, but I will try and switch this back on. All right, let's see if I can get me back into the pretty picture. And there we go. Hello. So the last of the four films is called Five Corners. It was directed by an actor, producer named Tony Bill. He was in a whole bunch of movies in the 60s and 70s, but he transitioned out of acting and into producing and directing. He produced with his partners Taxi Driver, and he's a marvelous director. Um, this movie was written, it was the first script by the great playwright John Patrick Shanley, who later wrote the movie Doubt, wrote and directed Doubt. Um, and as you can see from the image on the poster, in which this is a high school teacher with an arrow in his back, which is the opening of the movie, in which a high school teacher is shot and killed by a bow and arrow in the Bronx in the 1960s. The cast is a rockin' cast, including Jodie Foster, Tim Robbins, John Turturro, and here's some pictures from the movie. This is Rose Gregorio playing John Turturro's mother. Like I said, John Patrick Shanley, who wrote and directed Doubt, he wrote Moonstruck. He wrote the script for Moonstruck, so you get the idea of a poetic, human, dramatic story, but a certain level of unnaturalness, which you can see here in Rose Gregorio's completely deranged mother, for John Turturro, who plays a angry sociopathic character who is returning home. He has gone to jail for a bar fight and now is coming back for revenge. This is Tim Robbins, who plays a young policeman's son, the son of the policeman. I believe Turturro's character was put to jail because Tim Robbins broke up the bar fight and got him arrested. It's once again very, very naturalistic, very, very beautiful, but also very, very poetic and unnatural. For instance, I can't even describe some of the unnatural, fascinating combinations of characters that you meet. There's two policemen investigating the mysterious bow and arrow murder of the teacher, high school teacher. There's a couple of high school boys taking a couple of high school girls out for a night. The entire story takes place in one day, a day and a night. It is poetic, it is violent, it is hilarious, it is bizarre, it is beautiful. It is called Five Corners. So once again, let me run through these movies. Odd Man Out. They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Coming Home, and Five Corners. Those are the four absolute masterpieces that people just don't seem to know about. I urge you to take a look at them to understand just how amazing modern motion pictures can be. All of these are from the 20th century. All of them are amazing, and I urge you to check them out. Okay, let's do some questions. Hello, Steed. It's all right. You're allowed to be late. They Shoot Horses and Coming Home were very depressing films. John Wayne won Best Actor over Jon Voight. That is, well, I don't agree that they were depressing. I honestly don't believe that They Shoot Horses is depressing. I know a lot of people think so. It's got some darkness to it, but I believe there is something in seeing a tragedy. I don't believe tragedy is depressing. I believe that tragedy is cathartic. In other words, watching this tragic story, to me, liberates our sense of the value of life and the need to be better to each other, and the beauty of the tragic act, the empathy with which we understand why such a terrible thing can happen. I'm not spoiling anything here. I'm making sure not to spoil anything for any of these movies. But John Wayne did, in fact, win Best Actor over Jon Voight. John Wayne was in True Grit at the time. So, yeah, it was a sign of the times. Okay. Just checked Full Coming Home is free on YouTube. Excellent. Yeah, these are masterpieces. Oh, damn. Yes. Little Big Man and Picnic Walkabout. These are actually, I will say, I love Little Big Man. Little Big Man is another one of these late 60s, early 70s films. That's a Western, a sort of fable of the West. So yes, those are Michael, aces on that. I completely agree. Oh, wow, Steed, you've seen Odd Man Out. I am so glad. Is that not an amazing movie? Um, anyway, I'm open for questions. You can ask me almost anything, whatever you guys have on your mind. Um, but yes, let me just say this is by no means, these are not the best movies. They're not. Although if Letterboxd was asking a top four, I would feel good about saying these were my top four. But they're not. They are in my top 100, my top 100, 200, because I can't imagine having a top less than that. I believe that you should have a top 1,000. But this would still be up in the top of the top 1,000. I absolutely adore these movies, and I believe that it is important to share the things I love. Okay, Robert says, do I think that you can sell a Western script these days? Actually, weirdly, it's not a bad time for Westerns, as I understand it. Let me once again emphasize that I have been out of the business for 5 years, and the business has been changing monumentally in the past 20 years, but especially the past 5 years. So therefore, I cannot say with any certainty that anything is on the leading edge of business interest. I can say that as far as, is there a prejudice against Western scripts? No, because Yellowstone brought back the Western mentality, the Taylor Sheridan corporate universe, which includes Yellowstone and 1883 and 1925. There's a whole bunch of Yellowstone spin-offs, but the Western vibe, the Western genre is quite alive. But once again, can you sell a movie? Hard to say. Western movies don't travel as well. An American Western story is not going to play internationally as well, and most of the profits for Hollywood now come from international sales, as far as I know. I once again, I am no expert in business matters, but I do know that the Western atmosphere, the Western concept of stories about the West, are currently somewhat in vogue because Yellowstone has been so popular. One of the big problems is any movie a possible script, because truly television or streaming or whatever you want to call serialized home screen viewing is really where the action is, where the money is, where the movies are often actually going direct to streaming. But I would say my short answer is, do you think you can sell a Western script these days? Sure. Why not? Odd Man Out is good, says Irish Steed, but it would have been 10 times better if they'd had a few Irish actors. Fair, absolutely. And the story is definitely very English. Absolutely. It's based on what I believe is an English novel. Hang on. Coffee. Yes, for those of us across the Atlantic, it's hard to know all the distinctions. We're easily fooled by British actors who have American accents, so the differences between Britain and Ireland are not always discernible to those of us here on the west coast of the American continent. So I apologize for not knowing that much about the fake Irishness of Odd Man Out. To tell you the truth, I don't even think of it as Irish, honestly. I mean, I do, because the story is deeply about Ireland. But really, to me, it's noir. It's the city. It's the idea of a person who is let loose in society, vulnerable to the forces of society. And as such, you know, to me, it's a make-believe world. Anything in a 1947, to me, movie is going to be a make-believe world in a certain sense. And I believe that's a good thing. I hope that these silly murder series finally stop. Why do these get all the funding? Seen it, done that. Well, the reason they get all the funding is because you've seen it, because people are watching them. People always love, since the beginning of literature and theater, murder stories tend to be very, very popular. Murder songs for a long time. There was such a thing as murder ballads. And there were lots of songs which told the story of some kind of murder. We are fascinated, repelled, frightened, and drawn to stories of murder, stories of violence. So my take on this is, well, first of all, the silly murder stories is interesting because that's simply a direct consequence of Steve Martin's series, Only Murders in the Building, which is a fun detective. It's funny murders. It's comedy detective stuff. And that has, so silly, I don't know if you mean silly murders in that sense, but that genre, the reason that anything becomes popular as a genre, as a style, as a type of movie, is because one example of it wasn't a surprise hit. And once something is a hit, all the companies will look at that and say, oh, the public clearly wants this thing. Let's do that thing. That has been true since, as far as I know, the beginning of entertainment. I know that it was true back in theater, in radio, in whatever it was. There were trends of popularity in which someone did something, almost always it's something unusual in some way. And in doing so, they showed the audience a new possibility, which the audience flocked to. When the audience loved that thing, the other less imaginative producers and distributors said, the public will go to this, let's do it. It has now become so corporatized and optimized that if something like Marvel movies become popular, or Pixar movies before it, or whatever it is, you will see Star Wars, anything that brings in an enormous amount of money is why other things get made that are essentially imitation. But that's what we all want. I mean, the truth is, all of us have a hunger for new things, but also a hunger for familiar things. When we look at a movie, we want to say, what's it like that I know of? Most people will say, it's a John Wayne movie. He's going to be a hero. It's going to be set with Americans taking over the world. If it's a science fiction movie, they're going to say, I know what those are like. That is what they sell, because you never know what the actual movie is going to be. So you can't say, I want to buy that, because you have no idea what it is. So they try and see, what is it like? The actor who's in it, the genre, the style, whatever it is, they're going to say, you liked this last time. Come on and see this one. Anyway, so that's my answer on silly murder series and whether or not they they will stop. The reason that they get all the funding is because, at least for a while, there will be a wave. There was a wave of disco dancing movies in the 1970s and 80s. There's a wave of musical biopics currently because Bohemian Rhapsody and the Elton John biopic were very, very popular. And since we've had a large swath of unpopular musical biopics, although they can be interesting. Okay. Odd Man Out, Steed tells me, has English writers, directors, and actors. Very English mentality, not Irish. But still a good movie if you actually don't know Ireland and our history. Indeed. I will keep it away from from Banshees of Inisherin. I completely understand. I understand conceptually. I do know many differences between England and Ireland, including the fact that one is occupying part of the other and has done so for way too long. Sorry to the English, but I'm not a big occupying fan, except occupying Wall Street. That was good. Skepular says, how to give constructive feedback. Great question, Skepular. Okay, let's talk about that. How to give constructive feedback. The first thing to remember is to try and find positive feedback. In other words, not just compliment, to find positive ways or positive steps, positive uses of the negative thing you are seeing. It does no good to simply praise. And one of the things that is trained in the movie business is executives and producers are trained to give you some flattery up front, to tell you the good things so that then they can slam you on the bad things. The result of this is that any experienced writer literally cringes at the flattery, because I know what they're simply doing it in a programmed manner in order to cushion the blow for what they are about to say. So honestly, I literally flinch when they start with compliments. The point of constructive feedback is to think not what is wrong, but what can we do to help make that better? In other words, to simply say your characters are shallow or stupid, or it doesn't make any sense that they do this, that doesn't help. Think about why. Why is that character shallow? Is it because they are repeating the same thing? Is it because they are a stereotype? Whatever it is, think about that and try and explain that so you can say, look, you're saying that this person who's a dentist is very nerdy and weak-willed because that's what you think of dentists, but let's talk about them as a person. Or your plot doesn't make any sense because you've completely jumped from not having a plan to doing the plan without showing the plan coming. Whatever it is, try and think. Now, you don't have to solve all their problems, but you do have to try, when you're doing constructive criticism, to think not just what's wrong, but why is it wrong? And then they may have to figure it out for themselves how to fix that. The other thing that I would suggest doing is remembering not to impose, like if I say, you could make that character more interesting by doing X, not to say that is the way to do it, to say this is my take on what you could do it, but you should do your way of dealing with this problem, or what I see as a problem. It's very important when you do criticism to emphasize that this is your opinion. You are not necessarily right. Even if you are right, it's still your opinion. And other people might, think differently. The other thing I would really do is ask questions. When you are, if you've got a character who you think is like, this is the dopiest character in the world, it's just ripped off from another movie, say, why is that character so aggressive? Why is that character so pathetic? Whatever it is, don't necessarily tell them it's wrong. Ask them why and see what they thought they were doing. That really, really helps in constructive criticism. Ask questions about the things that shake you before you say, and then you might say, I didn't love the way that character worked, but at least you'll understand what they're trying to do. And the final thing I would say about constructive criticism is remember that there are different ways to do things, and that simply this may be a good version of a thing you don't like. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's really important not to tell people that their work is bad. That doesn't help anybody. Even if you think it's bad, like if you think they are completely incompetent and have a lot to learn, then emphasize learning. Say, I would suggest that you're going to need to write 4 or 5 more scripts to get practice. Which is to say, that's great. That's how you learn. This is a good step. As opposed to saying, man, you really don't know what you're doing. Being negative, being definitive are the worst, the least constructive things. Remember that constructive criticism only works if you are helping them to do what they intended. Now, you may think that's a worthless thing. You may say, no one will ever make, this opera that you've decided to make into a movie. But if they're trying to do an opera, don't try and show them how opera is bad. Try and show them how to make opera work better. Does that make sense? I mean, those are my takes on constructive feedback. Steve, it definitely is a made up. Nishaj is also having some coffee. Well, here's to you, Nishaj. And this is not vodka. Okay. So We watch them because it's all there is. I believe that that is about silly murder stories, or there are actually there are trends. And one trend, by the way, is the docudrama or the investigative nonfiction documentaries about real murders. Um, the reason that those are popular is because they're easy and they're cheap. It is really, really cheap to do these documentaries compared to staging a whole invented story. Um, and there's something about the true crime label, even if these stories are vastly distorted from the truth, that tends to lure people in. So that's why we are seeing so many. Leah, hello, Leah. Nice to meet you. Shoot Horses was on the single TV channel in Romania right after the fall of communism, 1990. For the first time, I realized that film is art. Until then, we only saw Indian love movies and Romanian history. That is fascinating, and what a great introduction to film art. I am so glad. Thank you for telling me that, Leah. I'm glad to hear that someone has shared my, because I saw it when I was, I guess, 11 or 12 years old. My parents took me to the movie theater to see that one. There's controversy about whether my parents were insane, but I don't think so. I think it was cool. Anyway, cool, Leah. Thank you for telling me about that. I actually, you brought up another thing about They Shoot Horses, which is it was filmed essentially on a single set. There's a couple of scenes outside the pier on the beach, or some flashbacks to a field, but almost the entire movie takes place in this one building. Now it's a big building, and there are some rooms within the building, but the entire movie takes place over the course of a long time in this one building. So they built this extraordinary set. And one of the things that they had to do was figure out how to, they wanted to be able to film 360 degrees, that the entire thing was a working dance hall. And the still photographer has reported that he had to figure out how to hide in the set and hide in order to take his stills. They had to hide cameras in various places. Anyway, okay. Hello, Mark Burton says, he hopes I am well. I am well, thank you. Kick-Ass is one which I'm thinking of. Kick-Ass is a delightful movie. To me, it's not one of the greats. It's a really solid, entertaining, terrific movie, with a lot of the things that I'm talking about. That sense of weird, poetic, lyrical violence and undercutting a lot of the world. But it's not like all of these are very, very naturalistic in one sense. In other words, the world that they are filmed about appears to be real, and yet at the same time it is artistic. Kick-Ass is in a fantastical world, a great one, a great comic book world. Do you mean the cozy murder mysteries? They were massive in the 80s with older people. Columbo, Matlock Murder. Yes. Propaganda, only murders. Yeah. Yes. No, there is a tradition since the beginning of detectives, since Agatha Christie, and many other 1920s mystery writers. Cozy murders or cute murders, amateur detectives are indeed a genre. Also Poker Face, yeah, which I loved. They never really went away. Blame Agatha Christie. Yeah, we can indeed, but I think credit Agatha Christie. Michael says, I took a 12-week class on film noir in the 40s and 50s and saw some great movies. That's because the film noir is to me one of the great genres, although I'm getting more and more to love them all. I really do love all genres pretty much. Okay, yeah, no, Steed, I would think that you would not be a big fan of, as a person of Ireland, occupation would not be your favorite thing. I hear you. Okay, probably we should slow down on the comments and questions because I am going to be stopping in 15 minutes, but keep going. All right, let's see. That was a contradictory instruction, wasn't it? I apologize. Yes, cozy mysteries, but they're also American films that are silly, as in non-interesting. Okay, that's different. Nonsense scripts. Okay, there isn't silly as in a derogatory term for something that's dumb or worthless, is different from something that is deliberately silly, like Only Murders in the Building is comedy. It's silly in the sense that it is deliberately comically silly. Um, anyway, um, and yes, indeed, the reason that people watch series detective stories is to watch the main character solve the murders. The point is not the murders. There's always a little beginning, middle, and end drama of the case. But what's fun is watching how the detective operates in their world, and of course the cleverness of whatever the mystery of the week is. I'm curious what would be three of your top recent movies that came out in the last 10 years. Have you heard about the movie Sinners, and have you seen it yet? No, I have not seen it yet because I had family visiting this weekend and I couldn't go. But I am planning to go later this week because Sinners just sounds fabulous. It sounds very much actually like the sort of thing that I am saying I love the most, which is a mixture of genres, a mixture of realism and fantasy, a mixture of extremes and of small character beliefs. Yeah, I've heard Sinners is great. Three of your top recent movies that came out within the last 10 years. There's so many. I mean, Barbie and Oppenheimer were great. Actually, weirdly, the trailer just came out for a movie by this writer-director. There's a new one coming out. I don't know much about it, Weapons, but it looks great. But Barbarian is a horror film from a few years ago that I absolutely loved. There are just so many. There's so many great films. I am a fan. I like to enjoy things. Okay. Uh, about the formulaic. Yes, the formulaic structure, whether it's Save the Cat or another book or Hollywood's, is boring and restrictive. So Burgundy's point is that the reason that we have a problem when something becomes a fad, like silly mysteries or mystery series that are badly done, when there is a fad in which basically people for business purposes are saying this will be popular, let's do that, is that it does tend to degrade the quality. Now and then you'll get something that within a trend is brilliant, but very, very often things are attempting to imitate something great. And as soon as you do that, if you're not bringing something new to it, something personal to it, something real to it, it tends to suck. It can be okay. There's certainly some imitative genre-y films that are like, but anyway, yes. And the TV format helps greatly indeed for the series detectives. Okay. I enjoy the modern Irish murder mysteries. Bad Sisters series is brilliant. There's a different sense of irony than Brit or American. Indeed, absolutely. I am not quite. Yeah. Bad Sisters. I only saw the first season, but I enjoyed it very much. Michael remembers when theaters used to show 2 or sometimes 3 movies. The second movie was a first-run movie the week before. Yes, they were called the B movie. Not B like in Bumblebee, the A and B movie. The A was the new feature, the bigger feature. The B movie was either an older film that was being recycled, or they made B movies, shorter, cheaper, usually a genre movie. So yes. Ricky Norman also suggests Bloodlands, which I have not heard of, but sounds good. I liked Barbarian, but I was confused a little. It was filmed. It is confusing because it does subvert expectations. Barbarian is a movie that starts out, you think you know what the movie's about, and then it begins to change and develop, and I don't want to spoil anything except to say it's more complicated than the initial setup and the trailer would have you believe, which I believe is brilliant. But on the other hand, is that easy to follow? No, not if your expectations are, I need to follow the Hollywood rule that, You meet the main characters and you follow them on their hero's journey. Although that actually does remain true in Barbarian. Okay. Willie Dessalines says, screenwriting is so weird. There are so many people involved. Why can't one writer just tell the story they want to tell? Like that's only allowed in novels. Willie, I am with you here. I feel you. It took me, I was studying to be a screenwriter for way too long, about 18 years, before I started to work in the business. And I simply had it in my head because partly of the way that movies are publicized, in which they give the illusion that there is a creative writer whose script is picked up because it's so brilliant, and then a great creative director works with it, and then they all agree and everybody just works that way, which is just not the way things are done. But it's easier to sell than the story of they hired and fired half a dozen writers and each one contributed something, but only the fourth one actually got the main writing done. It's very hard to explain how crazy the screenwriting job is. The reason is because the people with the power who are investing in movies, which means the distributors whose money trickles down to the executives and the producers and the directors, they are responsible to make films, but they mostly can't write. So therefore, they are dependent on a writer to do the job for them in order for them to do their job. Now, what that means is that they are frustrated because what happens is they will imagine a thing and they hire a writer, or they'll buy a script and imagine what they want to do with it. And they will tell a writer, rewrite it like this, or change it like this, or write it like this. Well, telling any artist, do this thing, it's still going to come out like that artist would do it. And there's still going to be 1,000 decisions that have to get made, which are going to have to be creative decisions. I've talked a lot about this in 2 videos. One is instinct. I will put a link to this, but the whole point is that creatively, you are operating very much off of a mixture of skills and tools, but also instinct, your imagination, and therefore what somebody else, like your producer, imagines you will write and what you actually write, as you have to figure out scene by scene how to solve problems and how to make it interesting and how to make it emotional. All of that is going to be a surprise to the producer or the director who has a fantasy of what it's like. Now, a really great producer or director is in tune with the creative process, and they will work with that. Most of them are simply feeding off of what they have seen, and they are frustrated that you are not doing what they have seen because you can't, because it's already been made. So they are endlessly annoyed and frustrated that people are following their artistic path, doing the best they can with the art they do. And so what they do is they say, okay, well, we'll get them to do that 2 or 3 drafts, we'll pay them, then we'll fire them, and we'll hire a different writer to fix these spots that we don't like or to add another layer to it. They simply believe that more cooks are better. And therefore, if one writer is good, 30 writers, and unfortunately now we have gotten to where they are hiring 30 writers sequentially for projects. I don't know. Why is it this way? Because it's very, very big business. That's why. And therefore, nobody can say, well, that's a cool piece of art. It's good in this way and it's bad in that way, which is how we should be judging art, honestly. This is the other video that you should take a look at, contest versus library, because the film business is a contest. Who is going to win the weekend and make the most money? That's a dumb thing to do with art, but it is how it operates. So the answer is, why is screenwriting so whacked and weird? Why is it that they don't just let one writer tell the story they want to tell, because the writer is just an employee in the movie business. The controlling powers within the movie business are the directors, but more than the directors, the studio executives and the producers. They will sometimes give director the power, but they actually, until the director has a final cut contract, which is very rare, the company actually owns the piece. And the company is like, well, let's see what happens if we put another writer on it. Okay. How to know? Skepular, I am very sorry. It's too late to answer that. But, oh, wait, I already did this one. Hold on. Good idea. I did a live stream. And I will put a link to it down in the description of this video about 10 minutes after we're done here. But my opinion on ideas is basically, how do you know if it's marketable or original? These are sort of trick questions because it doesn't necessarily have to be original. What it has to be is an original version, but it doesn't of whatever it is, but it doesn't have to actually be out of, like, it is no longer possible to come up with a completely original work. It may have never been, but certainly now with the amount of art that has been produced in the past few centuries, there is nothing that is totally original. So what you're looking for is your particular spin on a thing that does not have to be original. As for marketable, you need to survey the industry that you are talking about at the time you are talking about, because especially now, literally, what's marketable changes every couple of weeks. And so that you should be watching IndieWire and Hollywood Reporter and Deadline. These are all websites, Variety, but essentially Hollywood Reporter, IndieWire, and Deadline are probably the best in many ways for what deals are being, what's being sold, what's in production, and that's how you can tell what the business is looking for at the moment. Anyway. I will put a link down there where I get it, because my basic feeling about there's no such thing as a bad idea. There are ideas that are harder to sell at certain times, but it depends on who you're trying to sell to. Things will be very different if you're trying to sell something to the Irish Film Board as to, the Hollywood studios. They're related, but they're not the same. So the answer is marketable is one problem. Good idea is another problem, and the answer is, how are you going to make the idea good? There is literally no such thing, as far as I'm concerned, of a bad idea. It's what are you going to do about it? How are you going to make it emotional or shocking or inspiring or whatever it is you're trying to do? That's your choice. Okay. Spurgundy points out exactly. The question is, can you have a script that is both marketable and original? Because original tends to be hard to market. Most movies these days are marketed by their cast or director, not by the stories they tell. That is very true. The one thing you hope is that a cast or director will be attracted to a good script, to a good story, to strong characters. Okay. So no more questions, please. Skepular says, Zach Kreger. Oh, he's the guy who did the weapons. Yeah. Explained on a stream how he envisioned every detail of shooting Barbarian in his head, and his last film was the terrible Miss March. He had to get out of director jail. Yeah, and I expect that if he also talked about how he planned every detail, he also eventually had to deal with the fact that no matter how much you plan, you still have to work with what reality you are working with. Half of the IMDb news page is about AI films being made. If that is so, and it wouldn't surprise me, all I can say is yes, indeed, tears, that's bad. Okay. Is the movie format becoming obsolete? Are series taking over, or is there room for both? My belief about this is certainly series are first of all, they just take more of time. In other words, if you commit to a series, you are going to watch more. And if a streaming network can get you to watch more by having a 12 or 30 or 50-hour series, they would rather do that, because now they've got you hooked watching their shows for 50 hours. However, I do believe that there is always going to be a place for the story that you can watch in one sitting. Now, for some people, that's 20 minutes. But for many people, a 2 hour or hour and a half story remains a thing you're looking for. So I don't believe that movies as a form are going to go out of business. They're just not the primary business. And this is the other thing. It's a business that's a stupid way to judge art. That's like saying, I like short stories, so let's just not make novels. Or I like novels, so let's not make short stories. That's terrible. The idea is that you should have both available so that different people can watch different things at different times. I do believe that the distributors, which are currently mostly streaming services, are going to continue to make movies, but they will put them on streaming channels instead of in theaters, or the theater one will be very short. The one exception to that is going to be what they call tentpole movies, the big, Mission Impossible and Thunderbolts, which, by the way, both of which I am looking forward to immensely. But the event that you want to go see on a big screen with the big sound and the big crowd and have fun with it, that will continue, just like in theater, which used to be a central art form 100 or so years ago, has now shrunk down until theater is either little things done in local spots, and there will be indie films, which are the equivalent of little theater productions, or big Broadway shows, spectacles that draw in the tourists for the big money. Those will continue to both exist. So the answer is the movie format becoming obsolete? No, but just like the radio show had its vogue for a very, very brief time in the 1920s and 30s, and then it got taken over by movies and television. But radio and audio did not go away. It's just not the driving central force. It is very possible that movies, TV shows entirely are going to become sort of sidelined for video games or social media. I don't know. I believe that there will probably always be a place for stories that you can watch in one sitting, which is a movie. So that's my answer. They always say, make it so personal that it becomes universal. That is absolutely my belief. You never know what is going to take off or why, but I can assure you that trying to please too wide an audience is probably going to make things bland. It may even become popular, but it will also become forgettable. So yes, I would agree. Make it so personal, it becomes universal. That is great. You are very, very welcome, Steed. Enjoy. I am thrilled, all of you. It has been great to chat with you for an hour, and I look forward to talking next week. Until then, let's remember to go write something.